A little bit. What do you think? Perfect. Good. Okay. Well, so we're going to get started this morning. Just going to open up and stretch a bit.
I'll be back.
Okay. So we're going to start with one of my new favorite moves, and that is to try to touch your shoulder blades together behind you. It's just very, this feels like opening a creaky door that's been shut for too long. Just open, and then of course, close it back all the way. Just wrap it around and close it. Sometimes, especially as women, I think as a mom, I often get this sort of hunched, holding a baby, nursing a baby, feeding, taking care of things, hunched look. And so it's good to just have it open for a while. Even sitting and resting, we sometimes are like this. So it's good to just let that back open up occasionally and feel the other side of life there. Movement is healing. Okay, so now opening the arms wide. And these are just things we do to get the body and the mind and the bloodstream and the hormones and everything moving before we start to do studying and discussion and learning, so that we're prepared. This is a preparation and sort of a whole view of looking at our lives, rather than just being one-dimensional. We're not just here to read the scriptures or even to talk about an essential oil. We're going to do everything all together, because we are a whole being. We're physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, social, and all of those combine together to create who we are. And we need all of them, and we need all of them to be unified and working together. So we appreciate every part of our body, and we care for every part of our body. So let's open up our head a little bit and do just a little bit of tapping. So we're going to start actually on the side of our thumb, because on the side of the thumb there's some nerve endings here that open up the body. So just a few taps there, and then we're going to start on the top of the head.
Does it matter which thumb?
No, just tap the side of the thumb. It's just like a little Morse code to tell the body it's time to send messages of healing. Okay, now we're going to do the top of the head, and we're going to say, I am enough.
I am enough.
And now we're going to say it here. I am enough. I am enough. And now, just beneath the I am enough. I am enough.
Kind of on the cheekbone, or?
And then just below the nose. I am enough. I am enough. And the chin. I am enough. I am enough. And now just on the collarbone right there. I am enough. I am enough. Now to the side, under your arm. I am enough. I am enough. Sometimes you really have to work at getting down to the bone underneath there. I am enough. Hey, welcome. Oh,
I was
and
looking
then
in all the wrong places.
and then back to the top of the head. I am enough. I am enough. Now, this tapping is something that I learned about a long time ago, but it's used in some psychological therapies and holistic therapies to just start sending messages to the nervous system and the mind to wake them up to what you're trying to tell them. So if we're trying to give a message of openness and oxygen and light and life, then it helps to tap that message into your consciousness, into your body. And that, as you say those words, open, light, life, enough, abundance, truth, prosperity, and then do the same thing on, so it's here, 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 here. That's a few of them. There are more that you can tap, but those are some simple ones that you remember. Just those basic points along in your body, and just gentle tapping there while saying an affirmation has a very powerful effect on the psyche to stimulate and promote healing. So we don't just talk about affirmations, we talk about affirmations with good nutrition and good attitudes, and helping both the body, mind, and soul of you to accept it instead of just doing one thing, and that being maybe, just one part of you, and the rest of you is just over here lolling. That doesn't work. So we're looking at doing the whole. So that was our opening exercise, just a little bit of tapping. So and before that, so we're for the people who just came, we're just going to open up our shoulders again. So just touch your shoulder blades behind you. It's really good just to wake up that part of you. As moms and dads, we tend to be in this position a lot, taking care of children. And so we don't get the other side of that, which is opening and receiving. I love the words of Brigham Young. He said, if you're looking for prosperity, then here's what you do. You take your porridge bowl and you put it right side up, so that when the blessings come, you're ready. So that's, to me, what this feels like. It feels like opening up my porridge bowl and saying, pour it in. I'm ready. So that's what the word pour means. It means open and ready to receive. So that's what that exercise is about. And I don't know if I would call them exercises so much as just, I like the word position, because your body just needs to know that it has all positions, not just one. Service. We tend to do that sometimes. We feel like service is the only thing, but really there's service, and then there's recreation, and then there's self-care, and then there's socialization, and lots of different positions that we can be in. So I like to think of it in terms of that. So now I need my other bag here. So the oil that we're going to look at today is lime. Lime has got to be one of my most favorite oils. So after we've done that opening and felt that, I'm just going to let you put a little of that on. You can even put it on those tapping points before you tap. Because sending an oil and doing a tapping and doing an affirmation, you're just hammering it into your consciousness, and that's powerful. So anything that moves toward powerful healing, that's what we're looking at. So lime oil is this beautiful oil of cheerfulness. It just says, let's be cheerful, And I love that. We, especially today, who can't use a bit of cheer, that everything seems to be in the gloom doom mode these days. And so cheer is something it's very valuable and very beneficial. So go ahead and put some on and just feel that. Lime is the oil of the zest for life. So, when you talk about life, we think of life very often in terms of the things we have to do. But it's lime oil helps us to see that there's a variety, and variety is this spice that sometimes we miss. We forget to put that variety in there. And so, for instance, if you wake up in the morning and you say, oh man, I've got to do this all over again, that pretty much says there's no variety in your life. You can predict everything that's going to happen. Now, your mind has this weird thing in it, and it is that when you have done something, the next day your mind says, okay, that's going to happen again, and I'm ready for it. Now, if you do that enough, you get discouraged, you get sad, you get to feeling like your life is just a drudgery. And that's how your mind is wired. It's wired to expect what has been. And so it does. Your mind just says, okay, now I expect what was happening yesterday or what has always happened in your life. That's what makes it so difficult for people to change, is they don't realize that's how their brain is wired. So in order to overcome that natural tendency that we have as human beings, we give it something that it's not expecting, and we surprise it, and we do things that help us consciously to sort of spice up your subconscious mind's sense of safety and sameness. So the subconscious is determined to keep everything the same and predict it the same. But that can be deadly, deadly dull for the conscious mind, who absolutely must have variety. So you have those two things going on inside of you. So to keep the subconscious from just leading your life down this path of dullness and sameness forever, you wake it up and you say, today we're going to do something different. Today is going to be different. And I know you want it same because that feels safe to you, but we are going to give you variety and spice. That's what lime oil says. Lime oil says, let's do a little bit of something spur of the moment that maybe we weren't expecting. Let's act on a prompting that just like, oh, we could go to the park. Should we do that? So 2 days ago, my son-in-law and my daughter walked in the room and they're like, we should go on a hike. And first response from the room was, nah, that sounds hard. And then as we thought about it, well, the next day, my daughter walks in and she's like, I'm going on a hike. Who's coming with me? And before we know it, we had the entire group except for the one who was at work. And we went on this long hike that was hard and got super tired, had a blast, got pizza, and we all got to the end of the day and went, wow, that was amazing. And we posted pictures and everybody's like, that was so fun. And it was all because somebody said, I have an idea. Somebody else immediately said, well, that sounds, hard and work. And so
Cold.
give yourself permission to act on those little spontaneous, that's the word I was looking for, spontaneous ideas that will help you to spice up the life a little bit. And that's what lime is about, cheerfulness and spice. And if you're in the deadly dull stage of life in places, then that's what's needed. You need that spice. It's like a little chili powder in your taco. What's a taco if you don't have a little chili? It's like, oh, this is bland, who wants that? So yeah, keep lime in your spice cabinet because it's great. And lime is great for tacos and for Mexican food. And people who live in hot places have this challenge because where it's hot, it's very easy to just get lazy. Where it's cold, you wake up in the morning and it's cold on the floor and the water is cold and the car is cold. You're like, oh, it gets you moving. They don't have that where it's hot. So they have spicy food and they go, that's hot. And it gets them moving. So, we need it. So, okay, well, that is our oil for the day. And now our stone is this little bitty fun thing here. So, Archa, can you bring up the moonstone very quickly? Yeah. So this is a moonstone. Now this is a stone that's especially good maybe for women, but that doesn't mean that men can't enjoy it as well. It's just very calming. And they call it the moonstone because it helps to support people who struggle with their cycles. And it's also good for just calming the feelings that you might have on a, because women's feelings tend to go like this and men's are more like, and that makes it so that women tend to feel like that's their weakness. But it's just who they are. And so together that creates that spice, that difference. That's why men and women belong together, is because they are those differences. And so you celebrate them rather than criticize them, which is what you learn in a marriage. But the moonstone is just really good and peace-giving and calming. I just feel it even just looking at that stone. So I love my moonstone. It's really great.
There's also many different colors of it.
Yeah. So you can go for the visual effect as well. And don't underestimate the spice of visual things. You don't have to have an event. When my daughter moved into our house, she rearranged the living room, and she rearranged it in a way that it had never been done before that I know of. And it was so fun to just walk in that room and see that difference, and a little difference in an arrangement, in a color on the wall, a new piece of clothing that's a bright color that you didn't have before. That little bit of visual spice can just change the whole day and make it more bright, just like with the lime. Okay, so all of that cheerfulness now is going to be offset by the scriptures I'm going to talk about today, because I have been feeling so much lately, and especially in the scriptures that I've been reading, that this country and these people that we're looking at here right now, I will give you a quote from President Benson, although I'm not reading that quote, I'm just paraphrasing, but you can look up President Benson. It's a pretty common quote. He said something to the effect that if you think that famine and war and other things, he said, but famine and war particularly is what I'm talking about today. If you think those are not coming to this country, you will rue the day you harbored such a delusion. Now, if he's calling it a delusion to think that war is not coming, then that sounds to me like a pretty stern warning that war is coming. And these past couple of months, as I've been reading the scriptures, and especially this month, war has been a very strong warning. And I even saw it in the news, and that's what triggered my response. So let me just quote to you from Isaiah chapter 5. And these are scriptures that we recognize, but I'm going to hopefully give you a different perspective on them. So here in chapter 5, verse 20, it says, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. Woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine and men of strength to mingle strong drink, which justify the wicked for reward and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him." Okay, so God is basically listing the sins that he is not happy with here. And he is not really talking to the world here. There are chapters in the book of Isaiah that speak specifically to Babylon. But these first chapters, they're all talking to the house of Israel. And in other words, these sins are happening among his people. And the next thing he says is, "Therefore, as the fire devoureth the stubble, and the flame consumeth the chaff, so their root shall be as rottenness, and their blossom shall go up as dust, because they have cast away the law of the Lord of hosts, and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. Therefore is the anger of the Lord kindled against his people, and he stretched forth his hand against them, and hath smitten them, and the hills did tremble, and their carcasses were torn in the midst of the streets. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still." And then the next 5 verses are often quoted concerning the gathering of Israel. But listen, because these scriptures are talking about God bringing the war on this country. "And he will lift up an ensign to the nations from far, and will hiss unto them from the end of the earth. And behold, they shall come with speed swiftly." So who is coming? The enemy is coming. "None shall be weary nor stumble among them. None shall slumber nor sleep. Neither shall the girdle of their loins be loosed, nor the latchet of their shoes be broken. Whose arrows are sharp, and all their bows bent. Their horses' hoofs shall be counted like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind. Their roaring shall be like a lion. They shall roar like young lions. They shall roar and lay hold of the prey, and shall carry it away safe, and none shall deliver it. In that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea. And if one look unto the land, behold darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened in the heavens thereof." So a couple of key points where he says they have cast away the law of the Lord of hosts, and the light is darkened in the heavens thereof. He's talking about the church. He's talking about the people of the church. He's talking about us. And these things are what this land is about to experience. Because the people never go into captivity except they're wicked. And right now the church is in captivity. People are bound down, and they cannot worship, or at least they think they cannot, and so they do not. But if the church has stopped, and temple work has stopped, and the sacrament meetings have stopped, according to what God's word is and God's law, then the law of the Lord is cast aside. And the next thing to come is this war.
Well, it's already started.
Yes. So in Isaiah 64, verse 6, it says, but we are all as an unclean thing, and all our righteousness are as filthy rags. And we all do fade as a leaf, and our iniquities like wind have taken us away. And there is none that calleth upon thy name, that stirreth up himself to take hold of thee. For thou hast hid thy face from us, and hast consumed us because of our iniquities. So in these scriptures, he talks about how the people have hid their faces from him. And so he will hide his face from us. And when God hides his face from his people, then the result is not pretty. Then it says, but now, O Lord, thou art our Father, we are the clay, and thou art our potter, and we are the work of thy hand. Be not wroth very sore, O Lord, neither remember iniquity forever. Behold, see, we beseech thee, we are all thy people. Thy holy cities are a wilderness. Zion is a wilderness, Jerusalem a desolation. Our holy and our beautiful house where our fathers praised thee is burned up with fire, and all our pleasant things are laid waste. Now, does that sound like God is pleased with Zion and his people? Not at all. But when I translated that verse 64, verse 6, that says, we are all as an unclean thing, it says, and my water was like polluted, all of your, I can't anglicize it very well because it's not English. My water like your polluted, and like covering witnesses, all of your righteous I did. So he's talking about covering witnesses and uncleanness, and it's very clear that like in Malachi, where he's speaking to the priests and he chastens them, he says, you have called my altar unclean. So when they call the Lord's house unclean, and they spray it with disinfectant and say it's unclean, so we have to wipe it with this, and he calls it polluted something, and covering your witnesses. All the witnesses are covered. Everybody who is in the meeting is covered. And when you cover your face and hide your face from the Lord, then it's like Adam. Adam covered his face because he was ashamed. It's a representation of shame and sin. So when we cover our faces, it's because we feel ashamed.
How many times do you go into church and most everybody's wearing a mask and you're like, oh, I feel bad if I'm not wearing it. You know what I mean? That's the natural. That's your natural instinct. Like I walked into Walmart several times not wearing my mask, and my kids be like, Dad, why aren't you wearing a mask? Everybody else is. And I'm like, why? You know? Like and it's not a rebellion thing. I just believe that, like you're saying, you know, God's already blessed it. It's already clean. You know,
That's right. And we don't get our life from a mask.
Right.
We get our life from God.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe that, then you will fear men. And so God is dividing us to see who fears men more than God. And if you fear men more than God, you will put that mask on.
And the only time I ever wear my mask is when I have to go to the doctor. And because it's absolutely mandatory. I remember going into Walmart last week to get some stuff. And this little old lady was doing some shopping, and she literally just berated me. I mean, up one side and down the other. Why are you not wearing your mask? Why are you not wearing your mask? I have real anxieties with small places, big crowds. I'm claustrophobic. Wearing a mask makes me so claustrophobic that I can't. And I have other health reasons why I can't wear it.
Right.
And so I just told her flat out, I cannot wear a mask for health reasons. She goes, well, I have health reasons and I wear mine. At least cover your mouth. And I said, I cannot wear it due to health reasons. And she goes, well, I have lung problems and I'm still wearing mine. And I'm just, well, good for you. but I
Wow.
will not wear it. I can't, just due to the fact that the claustrophobia stuff for
Right.
me.
And that's your reason, but in what I've been reading in the scriptures, the ultimate reason is, number one, it's compulsion.
Compulsory, yeah.
And compulsion is not of God.
No.
And number two, it's showing that we don't believe that God is the source of our life. It's showing our fear. And number three, it has to do with servitude and showing allegiance to someone else. And like you said, rebellion, yeah, and that is something to rebel against.
Yeah,
Sure. We do not want to be subject to anyone but God. And God said even in the handbook, it's been a policy forever, no masks. And now for them to say you must, it's like, no,
Yeah.
no. And it's a hiding, and it's
Shame.
it's shame, and it's not of God, and God is not pleased with that part of us that would bow to the mandate of men, contrary to God's commandments and ordinances. So,
well, and I just have this theory with it as well, that if I'm gonna get it, I'm gonna get it with or without the mask. So I'm gonna be comfortable and not have to worry about the claustrophobic and the fear of wearing the mask. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
But not only that, I've heard and read, and I don't remember where, that there's people with O blood type that is not getting it. And it's because of the blood type. And it's weird.
Well, anyway, so ultimately, this is about allegiance. And that's, to me, what the mask represents. It represents where is your allegiance. And eventually, they will make it so you can't buy or sell anything unless you are standing in allegiance with them and showing your allegiance in everything. And so that's why I am doing these classes, because it's time for that separation. But if you are not ready for that separation, if you are afraid to be independent of Babylon and aren't prepared, then you will be so afraid that you would show your allegiance to them to keep yourself alive. But that's back to what Jesus said, he that saveth his life shall lose it, but he that loseth his life for my sake shall find it eternally. So we're being put to the test, and it is a life and death test, and everybody, I think, feels it, but some people are still wanting to justify being on one side or the other because they're like, well, we should, somebody said to me this week, well, don't you believe in the 11th article of faith? And I said, well, absolutely, I believe in the 11th article of faith, being subject to the laws, but this is not a law. And it can't be until it's voted upon. And
Right.
Even if it were voted upon and they said you must do it, which they're going toward, then I would say, then I will be separate and abstain from their kingdom.
Yep.
I will be separate from their kingdom, which is ultimately what God desires for Zion. Zion has to be separate.
Yes.
So the message today is that Zion will be separate. God will have a pure people, and he will not have people who will compromise to be in Babylon to get what they think they need from Babylon.
Did they read the 12th article of faith?
Oh, yes.
Well, there's the other article of faith that says, we claim the
Because the
privilege of
11th one
worshiping
says,
Almighty
according to
God
our dictates.
according
of
to
our
the
own
dictates of our own conscience,
That's
and
what I
we
was
allow
thinking.
all men to believe what they want,
Right.
And if we choose to not wear the mask because we feel God is protecting us, why why are you making it a law of man
When it's
that
not.
that is not according to what we believe, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
man is
Right.
corruptible, obviously,
Right.
you know, and it has been for thousands of years. Why would you
So,
say?
Yeah,
I don't understand.
and this is a big dividing line question, and everybody is
Absolutely.
talking about it, and it's because this is the line of demarcation, and God has put the line in the sand and said, decide whose side you're going to be on. And according to the scriptures I've read, there will only be a few people on the Lord's side.
Yep.
And everyone else in Babylon and out and in the surrounding area, but anyone connected with Babylon, he says, will be done. No one who is left in Babylon will be spared.
There was I was reading, it was a talk by one of the general authorities where he, I wish I could pull it back up. It was powerful to me. He talked about how the reason God allows wicked men to do what they do is because eventually he will, the revelation was that they will be as fatted drunkards, you know. That's how he takes over, is he has to allow them to get fat. He has to allow them to revel in their, you know, their sin. And once that happens, then it will be easy for him to overtake, you know, and come back into the world, because everybody's so powerful and strong now that they have to be lulled away into their carnal security, you know. And so there's that point in time that we haven't got to yet, you know. America has been this strong nation for how long now? They haven't reveled in their own, you know, look at how powerful I am, and they're not in that position where God can say, okay, here I come, you know. So, and people were,
Yeah.
I was listening to people talking, like, how can God allow this to happen? And I'm like, it's in the scriptures, people, you know. There has to be that time where everybody
God
thinks
allows
everything, all is well in Zion, you know. It
Well,
has to be that point.
It comes back down to free choice. We were
Mhm.
given the opportunity to choose right from wrong.
Right.
And if we choose whichever way we go, it's gonna be either man's choice or God's choice. You have to choose which way you wanna go.
Okay, so I was reading this morning, and I will recommend to you Psalm 51 through about 75. I just couldn't stop reading. And I'm like, well, how am I going to get a quote out of this?
Right.
But I marked a few in particular, but I practically got every verse here marked because it was all so good.
Yeah.
And speaking to today, you know, and I love that. That has not happened to me before this year. This year, everything just started to say now. So, you know, look at the scriptures again, look at the Old Testament again. But today I was in Psalm. And so right now it's Psalm 57. And this one particularly spoke to me. It says, Psalm 57 verses about 4 to 7. It says, my soul is among lions, and I lie even among them that are set on fire, even the sons of men, whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue a sharp sword. Oh, you see that? Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let thy glory be above all the earth. They have prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They have digged a pit before me, into the midst whereof they are fallen themselves. My heart is fixed, O God. My heart is fixed. I will sing and give praise. I will sing and give praise. And then in the next verse, awake up, my glory, awake, psaltery and harp. I myself will awake early. I will praise thee, O Lord, among the people. I will sing unto thee among the nations. For thy mercy is great unto the heavens, and thy truth unto the cloud. Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let thy glory be above all the earth. You know, the fact that they have silenced the singing is
hard.
the worst. They have left off worship,
Yep.
basically. And to me, that is the greatest offense that we could do to God, is to cease to sing his praise. And if that is not something to be ashamed of, I don't know what is. But I would not. The first time they said it and I came to church, I'm like, no, we are singing. I don't care what they say. We are singing and we're not wearing that vile thing on our faces. This is not worship. No, I came here to worship and I will. And then when they sent us home, I said, then we will go home and we will worship at home. But Catherine said to me the other day, she said, I have to go back. I'm going to go back and I'm not going to wear that mask and I'm going to sing. So because her husband goes there to fulfill his calling. And she said she's been staying away because she just couldn't stand to see them with the mask. But she said, I'm going and I'm singing until they kick me out.
Well, I love that song that you just talked about. It's a conscious choice between you and God.
That's
And you
right.
can't let anybody else dictate that.
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
Sing.
and we've talked about this a lot, me and Donnell. You want so bad to bring your family to church. You want so bad to tell your friends about the gospel and say, hey, and you feel that compulsion inside of you. Every man who hath been warned needs to warn his neighbor. Okay, that's great. But at the end of the day, it's about you and you and your relationship with God. That's all that matters.
That is.
I mean, we are required, the Lord tells us, to go warn our neighbor, but then they have to make the choice
That's
after
right.
that. And
you make
can
your choice.
you can
Yeah.
tell them 100 times, you can tell them 1,000 times, and that's your job. But it's not up to you to drag them to church,
No. Nor is it your job to put somebody's mask on
Right.
or to make
Exactly.
them do anything.
Yep.
And anybody who lifts their hand to make me do something, I will say no.
Yep.
No, it's not your place.
Well, that's the whole point. I mean, in the beginning, when there was the fight, like Satan wanted to be able
all
to
about
tell
agency.
us what to do.
What to do.
To
And that's
save
the-
ourselves.
Anytime that I'm told what to do, I'm like, you don't have that authority. God gave me a decision.
That's right.
And so I automatically rebel just because that's who I am. I'm like, you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
You can't. That's the whole
No.
point of us. We chose Jesus' side because we wanted to be able to make a decision.
And isn't that what we're deciding right now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is who will vote on
Yeah.
the side of agency.
Yeah.
So like I said,
Agency,
I
that's
recommend these 20 or 30 Psalms right here in the middle, 50 to about 75 or so. There are so many places in there where he talks about all these things. It's just repeated and repeated and repeated. And normally we wouldn't say, go to the Psalms to learn about the last days.
Right.
But I'm telling you, it's in there.
Yeah.
It's in there. Like I said, I have marked so many passages here. It's just, it's amazing. Anyway, I could read the whole thing and I'm like, well, I could just read it to them, but no.
We can read it.
Reproach hath broken my heart, and I am full of heaviness. And I looked for some to take pity, but there was none. And for comforters, but I found none. They gave me also gall for my meat, and in my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink. Let their table become a snare before them, and that which should have been for their welfare, let it become a trap. Now those words in there, the table and the trap and all of that, that has to do with everything that he's talking about with the covering. The trap is like this cloth covering, it says. I'm like, holy cow. He just nails it every single time. And it is a trap. It's Satan's trap to trap the people of God and pull them away right now, because right now is the critical time. And in the parable of the 10 virgins, we know that as soon as this happens, the next thing that happens is the Lord says, come up. And Babylon says, wipe them out. So those are the next two things that we have to look forward to. The war and God preserving the remnant of his people, a small remnant. In the book of Isaiah, he calls it like a little house in a cucumber field. Now in the cucumber field, they made little tiny huts. And he said, Israel used to be an entire multitude, a huge nation. And all that's left is this little cucumber hut. I mean, just the words of it just sound small, a cucumber, like, wow, that's incredibly, vivid in my mind. But that's what God is saying, though. That's how few people will get it right on the test. He's like, you all missed the main point, the whole question. What have I been telling you for 200 years, people? For 200 years. And it's no accident that we got it on the 200th anniversary of the restoration of the gospel. That we were now, 200 years later, being told, you're now accountable for what you've received. Joseph Smith gave his life for this knowledge. What have you done with it? What have we done with it? What's been done with it?
Very little.
They just tossed it out. It's like, we don't need to. Yeah, toss it out. We don't need it. What do we need? A mask. That's all we need. As long as you're in a mask, nothing else matters. And it's like, you mean prayer and fasting? Oh, I read so many scriptures where they're like, you shepherds, you're not healing people. You're telling the sick to go away. You're pushing them away with your shoulder. They have a big sign outside of everything that says, if you're sick, don't come.
Right.
Did God say that?
No.
Did God say to forbid anybody from coming?
Nope.
So what are we doing now? We're forbidding people from coming. If that's not casting away the law of the Lord, what is?
One little point here. It's really sad to me that there are members of other faiths that get this. I've seen, there's, and I'm not saying that they're right, but they understand the scriptures a lot better than some of the saints do.
Mm-hmm.
Like they get it. God is the ultimate healer. He has been for a long time. Why is the prophet a heart surgeon? He's a doctor, right? So, but the majority of us, of Latter-day Saints, aren't getting it.
No. And
they're not. And I don't know that they ever will. And it's sad to me. Like my heart breaks for people like that. And you can't force them. We've talked about that. But anyway, it's sad to me that there are people who understand the scriptures more than we do as saints.
Yes, like those people in Canada who said, take a hike, you guys, we're going to worship, and I don't care what you say. I know. It's like, so, in the Doctrine and Covenants, section 101, he gives the parable of the vineyard. And in the parable, he says, I planted this thing in a goodly land and planted the trees and built a fence. And then I told my servants to build a tower. And while they were building it, they started to argue among themselves and say, what need do we have of this tower? And he says, while they were at variance one with another, the enemy came and broke it all down. And I have wondered and wondered and wondered about that. And now, when I read it, I see it happening. We are now at variance with one another about the tower. So any ideas what the tower might be?
The gospel.
The gospel? But they had to build the tower. What do you think? I mean, it's definitely part of it.
Yeah, it's our belief in the gospel and how we perceive it.
But he said the tower was so that they could see the enemy. Protection. Protection was its main function. So you could see the enemy afar off, but the tower is also a fortress of strength and perhaps even a storehouse of weapons. So what are the things that represent the tower in our faith? That are food storage, thank you. Yes, that would be something that would protect us from the enemy should the enemy come, as per the Book of Mormon. Obedience, yes. Obedience to all the commandments, yes. But what have they been talking about lately? Our own.
I was just thinking about how we kind of like do more church home study. What is it called? homesteading church.
Church-based.
Yeah. So I was just thinking of, I'm sorry, my words get twisted every once in a
It's
while.
okay.
But that's what I was just thinking of, is how like important it is now that we're teaching our kids more in our home on a daily basis.
Yes,
Instead of
and
just that once a week.
didn't President Nelson say in his talking conference, he said to build places of security. That was his first number one point in likening ourselves to Captain Moroni. So what did Captain Moroni do? He was a captain of the army getting ready for an enemy to come. And he said, build places of security. And this is not just spiritual. So the thing that finally just exploded in my mind about this was the things that we've been at variance about have been the things of independence. So in order for Zion to be Zion, it has to be separate from Babylon. Zion and Babylon can't be married. They just can't. It doesn't work. Right now, they're in an illicit relationship, which is why he calls Babylon a harlot. So Zion, or the Church of God, is basically having a bad relationship with Babylon. And they have to be separate. And independence is the tower. Independence is that place of safety. And it represents the temple. But how can we have a temple if Babylon is telling us that you have to do certain things in it? That they want you to do in it.
Yeah.
And they are. The laws are now saying,
Yep.
if you're not going to perform these types of marriages, we're not going to let you have your temple.
Right.
If you're not going to wear masks, we're not going to let you go to church. If you're not going to do it our way, you're not going to do it at all.
Yep.
And right now, we're not really doing it at all. And so that tower represents independence, self-reliance. And what have we been hearing the past 2 years? Self-reliance, self-reliance. But does anybody understand self-reliance? Do
They
we
just
see?
think of food stores. They
Right,
don't think of anything else.
But how can you be self-reliant?
Right.
How could you tell Babylon to take a hike if you're just standing there with a 1 month, maybe, supply of starvation rations? After a month, then you'll be like, okay, I guess we're going hungry. And wouldn't you still be able to trust in God if you had that kind of faith? Isn't that what Israel did? When they walked away from Egypt, they walked away saying, okay, I hope you'll take care of
How
us.
many of them kept looking back, you know?
All the
It's like,
time.
yeah,
For 40 years, they
Yeah.
kept looking back.
why are we here? Why are we here?
And the
Why are
first
we
thing
here?
they wanted to know was, what about water?
Yep.
And the second thing was, what about meat?
Yep.
And God said, manna.
Yep.
And all that Israel said was, manna again? So every time we bake bread, Steve's like, manna again? That's awesome.
That was awesome.
Anyway, so yeah, we have to be so connected with God that when we leave Babylon, we're like the children of Israel leaving Egypt, only not like them, saying, oh, we want to go back. We want to have our iPhones, you know? And they're going to say, you can't have anything that we offer.
Yeah.
And that's the danger in being married, is that they say, well, we're going to take our stuff and go away. You can't have any of it. But once you're addicted to it, what are you going to say? You're going to be like, well, I have to. I'm addicted.
Your condition.
I want to go there, but I can't.
Yeah.
And isn't that what people are saying right now? Well, I want to go, I want to have faith, but I can't because my doctor is like,
And the other thing I like about that is it's absolutely a mental thing.
It is.
It's not, there's no physical
You're so
barrier
right.
whatsoever. We are not literally fettered to the government. We're not
No.
literally fettered to
It's right here.
man.
They've created
They've
it.
created
to be
that
that
consciousness in our mind,
Yes,
and we're so dependent on that.
yes,
And that's not what God wants. God wants us to be independent of man.
right.
So,
In the book of Revelation, he describes it as, the words say, they look and are stupefied. It's like they carry something that they look at and it stupefies them. It puts them in a place of, oh.
yeah.
I'm like, I totally see that. And the description that he gives, I'm like, yeah, it's a look and be stupefied.
Yep.
So yeah, it's where we get our information. It's the knowledge. It's who we're putting our trust in. It's who's feeding us, Babylon or God. Is this where you get your nourishment or that?
Yeah.
You know, it's a tool, but if we use it, you know, to feed our souls, then we'll be fed on the food of Babylon, which will be bondage, slavery, and bondage and slavery.
Yeah, why do you think they just started including Hulu and Netflix and Disney Plus with people's phone subscriptions?
Mhm.
Because they're like, oh, now we have them for phone and
Yes,
TV. We can keep in their minds all the
that
time.
is control. Yes. And I was watching the Ten Commandments the other day, and I realized as I was watching it that these people weren't slaves this way.
Right.
They were slaves monetarily. Because remember when Joseph was the prince of Egypt, he, when the people couldn't buy any more grain because they'd spent all their money, then he basically let them buy it on credit. In other words, now they were not independent anymore. And that's how the whole land began to be owned. All the people were owned, literally, monetarily owned by the Pharaoh. And so for 400 years, they lived in debt to Pharaoh. And, you know, how easy is it to get out of debt once you're in debt?
It's a lot harder than
Really
getting into
hard.
it.
Yeah. And once you're in debt and the government's like, well, we'll just give you more debt, or you get out and then get back in, get out and in and out and in, and you do this little dance with the government. That's where they want us. That's why they keep firing more debt, more debt, more debt at you, is because that's how they enslave people. In fact, that's what bail was about, fractional banking. I didn't know that it was a system of banking and debt where people didn't live from their own labor, independence, self-reliance, they lived on debt. Now, the church, Utah has the highest rate of bankruptcy and some of the highest rates of personal debt. They are ripe for the picking because they're like, well, we want to be comfortable. We want to feel like God loves us. We have to be prosperous so that it looks like we're righteous, because prosperity is righteousness, right? You know, monetary prosperity. So they have that fear of looking like they're poor. And so they want to look wealthy, and so they borrow themselves into debt and poverty and slavery.
I was just gonna say, I had a friend one time who, she said something that stuck with me. I was just a teenager. But she said, never like judge yourself against somebody who has a lot of things. She said, all that means is they have more debt than you.
Very often.
She said, because she had a couple businesses, and she said people just always assume that she has money. And she's like, I'm just in more debt than they are. And that stuck with me. So like, we don't take out a lot of debt because you never know.
Yeah, how can you separate from Babylon if they're going to come after you with a debt collection?
Right.
And put you in jail. And that's why the prophets have said repeatedly for the last 200 years, get out of debt. And most recently, President Eyring saying, pay off your house, get stay out of debt and be independent, be self-reliant. And those are just the beginnings. Mm-hmm. Once we did that, then we were like, okay, well, what's the next step? And then the next step. And that's what's led us to where we are today, where if they cut the tie between us and Babylon today, we would say, take off. We don't want anything to do with you. And in fact, when all of this started to happen, we began to feel more independent and more empowered. We were happier than we've ever been. So it wasn't a down or a sad time for us. It was actually an up time because we were preparing for it all along. It was just a little bit sad, like you said, looking at everybody else and going, aren't you having a good time? If not, why?
Yeah.
And so that's my message today. Enjoy your life, learn to be independent, self-reliant, and as you do one thing, God will show you the next. And there is always enough time if you have enough faith. Because this isn't about time, this is about faith. But I'm telling you, The war is at our doors. It is so at our doors that I expect it in months' time, not years' time. And that's saying something, and that's because of what I read in the scriptures. So that's my voice of warning today. And I love you, and I appreciate all of you coming here today. It's been such a great day, even though it was a pretty hectic morning, waking up and going, oh my gosh, Steve's not here to help me.
Oh, no.
Anyway, so thank you all, and have a great day. Thank you, Archa, for helping me, and see you guys later, and have a good day.
So can I come get some more